The first thing my mother said to me after 5 years away was, "We can't take you home." I thought she was joking. But when she closed the trunk of the car, got back in the driver's seat, and slowly drove away from the airport, leaving me standing there with 2 heavy suitcases and nowhere to go, I realized she meant every word. And the worst part, I had just spent 5 years working in another country for them. 5 years earlier, I had left my home with nothing but a small bag and a promise. My family wasn't poor, but we were struggling. My father's small shop had started losing money, my younger sister needed money for university, and my older brother had already made it clear he wasn't going to help anyone except himself. So I made the decision. I would go abroad. It wasn't easy to leave my home, my friends, and the only life I had ever known. But I believed that if I worked hard enough, I could change everything for my family. My mother cried the day I left. She hugged me tightly and whispered, "Come back successful, my son." Those words stayed with me every single day. The country I moved to was nothing like home. I didn't know anyone. I barely understood the language. The first job I got was in construction, carrying heavy materials under the burning sun for 12 hours a day. My hands were always covered in cuts. My back constantly ached. But every time I thought about quitting, I remembered my mother's voice. Come back successful. So I kept going. I lived in a tiny shared apartment with 4 other workers. Some nights we barely slept because of the noise, but I didn't complain. I saved every dollar I could. While others spent their money on entertainment, I sent most of mine back home. Every month, without fail, my sister's tuition, my father's shop, house repairs, medical bills. Whenever my mother called, she always sounded grateful. "You're the reason this family is standing," she would say. Hearing those words made all the pain worth it. But after the 3rd year abroad, something started to feel different. The calls became shorter. My mother didn't ask as many questions about how I was doing. Instead, she mostly talked about my brother. Apparently, he had started a new business. Then he bought a new car. Then he moved into a bigger house. At first, I felt proud of him. But sometimes something about the way my mother spoke felt strange. Whenever I mentioned visiting home, she would quickly change the subject. "Work a little longer," she would say. "Save more money." So I did. Year 4 turned into year 5. By that time, I had saved a significant amount of money. More than anyone in my family had ever seen. I wanted to surprise them. I didn't tell anyone I was coming home. I booked my flight, packed my bags, and imagined the moment I would walk through the airport and see my family waiting for me. I imagined my mother crying. My father hugging me proudly. My sister thanking me for everything I had done. The entire flight home, I kept smiling like an idiot. After 5 long years, I was finally going home. When the plane landed, my heart was racing. I turned my phone on and sent my mother a message. "I just landed." Her reply came a few minutes later. "We're outside." I grabbed my suitcases and walked through the airport doors, scanning the crowd. Then I saw them, my mother and my brother standing near a car. My father wasn't there. My sister wasn't there either. That was the first thing that felt strange. But I ignored the feeling and walked toward them with a huge smile. "Mom." For a second, she looked surprised. Then she hugged me quickly, but it wasn't the warm hug I had imagined for 5 years. It felt distant. My brother barely even looked at me. "Let's go," he said. No one asked how my flight was. No one asked how I had been. The car ride was quiet. Too quiet. After about 10 minutes, my brother suddenly pulled into a parking area near the airport entrance. I looked at him confused. "Why are we stopping?" He turned off the engine and looked at my mother. She took a deep breath. Then she said something that completely shattered everything I believed about my family. "You can't come home with us?" At first, I thought I had misunderstood. What? She avoided my eyes. "This house, it's not really your place anymore." My chest tightened. "What are you talking about?" My brother finally spoke, his voice cold. "Things have changed while you were gone." I stared at them both, waiting for someone to laugh and say it was a joke. But nobody laughed. My mother opened the trunk, took out my suitcases, and placed them on the sidewalk. Then she looked at me and said quietly, "You should find somewhere else to stay." And before I could even process what was happening, my brother started the car again. I stood there frozen as the car slowly drove away. My own family, leaving me at the airport like I was nothing. For a long time, I didn't move. People walked past me dragging their luggage, greeting their families, laughing. And there I was. After 5 years of breaking my body to support them, I had just been abandoned by the same people I sacrificed everything for. But what my family didn't know, what they had absolutely no idea about, was that during those 5 years abroad, something had happened that was about to change everything. I stood there for a long time after their car disappeared into the traffic. At first, I felt nothing. It was like my mind refused to believe what had just happened. 5 years of my life, 5 years of sweat, loneliness, and sacrifice, and this was how they welcomed me back. Left at the airport like a stranger, I slowly sat down on my suitcase and stared at the road where their car had vanished. People were reuniting with their families all around me. Some were hugging, some were crying, some were laughing. Every scene felt like a knife twisting deeper inside my chest. My phone buzzed. For a second, I thought it might be my mother calling to say it was all a misunderstanding. But it was just a bank notification. I opened it absent-mindedly, and that's when I saw the balance. Even after all the money I had sent home over the years, I still had more saved than I realized. I had worked extra shifts, taken side jobs, and made a few smart investments while I was abroad. The total number staring back at me was enough to start a completely new life. Right there at the airport, something inside me changed. The pain didn't disappear, but it turned into something else. Determination. If my family had decided I didn't belong anymore, then I would build a life so powerful that one day they would regret the moment they left me standing here. I grabbed my suitcases and walked back inside the airport. There was a small hotel connected to the terminal. It wasn't fancy, but it was clean and quiet. The receptionist looked surprised when I asked for a room for a few nights. That night, I barely slept, not because of anger, because my mind was racing with ideas. For 5 years abroad, I had learned more than just construction work. I had met people from different countries, watched how businesses operated, and picked up skills that most people back home didn't even know existed. One of those skills was logistics. While working overseas, I had helped a small shipping company during weekends. I learned how goods moved between countries, how supply chains worked, and how much money was involved in that industry. Back then, it had just been a way to earn extra cash. But now it felt like the key to something bigger. The next morning, I rented a small apartment near the city center. It was tiny. Just one bedroom, a small kitchen, and a narrow balcony overlooking a busy street. But it was mine. And for the first time since arriving home, I felt a strange sense of freedom. Over the next few weeks, I started researching the local market. I talked to small businesses, warehouse owners, and truck drivers. Most of them had the same problem. Shipping goods internationally was expensive and slow. Many companies were overcharging them because they didn't have better options. That's when the idea fully formed in my mind. What if I started a logistics company that connected local businesses directly with overseas suppliers and shipping routes? It sounded crazy. I was just one person with no connections. But then again, 5 years earlier, everyone said I was crazy for leaving home and working abroad. I had proven them wrong once. I could do it again. I invested a large portion of my savings into starting the business. At first, it was just me, a laptop, and a tiny rented office that barely fit a desk and 2 chairs. Some days were brutal. I got rejected by dozens of companies. Some people laughed at me when I tried to pitch my services, but every rejection made me more stubborn. Little by little, things started changing. The first client came after 2 months. Then another and another. Word slowly began spreading that there was a new company offering faster and cheaper international shipping solutions. Within a year, my tiny office had turned into a small team. Within 2 years, we had multiple warehouses and contracts with companies in several countries. And by the 3rd year, my company had grown bigger than I had ever imagined. We were handling shipments for some of the largest businesses in the region. One evening, I was sitting in my office looking out over the city skyline when my assistant knocked on the door. "You have a visitor?" she said. "I don't have any meetings today." She hesitated for a moment. "They said they're family." My stomach tightened. Family. I slowly stood up and walked toward the reception area, and the moment I stepped into the hallway, I saw them, my mother and my brother, standing there awkwardly near the front desk. 3 years ago, they had left me at the airport like I was nothing. Now they were standing in the lobby of the company I had built from the ground up. My brother looked around at the busy office, the employees moving between desks, the large company logo on the wall. His expression was completely different from the last time I saw him. No arrogance, just shock. My mother's eyes were already filled with tears. For a few seconds, none of us spoke. Then she whispered my name, and I could hear the regret in her voice. But what she said next made it clear that this visit was not just about regret. It was about something else entirely. Something they desperately needed from me. And the reason they came here was about to reveal the truth behind why they abandoned me at the airport that day. For a moment, none of us spoke. My mother stood there nervously, twisting the edge of her scarf, while my brother kept looking around the office like he had just walked into another world. 3 years ago, they couldn't even look at me properly. Now they looked small. "Can we talk?" my mother finally asked quietly. My assistant glanced at me, waiting for instructions. I nodded slowly. "Send them to the conference room." They followed me down the hallway in silence. I could feel their eyes on the glass walls. The employees working behind computers, the large screens showing shipment routes across different countries. Everything they were seeing had been built after the day they left me at the airport. When we entered the conference room, I closed the door and gestured toward the chairs. My mother sat down slowly. My brother remained standing for a few seconds before sitting as well. I took the chair across from them. For a long moment, the room was silent. Then I asked the question that had been sitting in my chest for 3 years. Why? My mother looked down at her hands. My brother cleared his throat but didn't say anything. Why did you leave me at the airport? I repeated. My mother's voice trembled when she finally spoke. Things were complicated. I leaned back in my chair. 5 years of my life working for this family, and the explanation is things were complicated. My brother suddenly spoke. You don't understand what happened while you were gone. Then explain it. He exchanged a quick glance with my mother before continuing. Dad's shop collapsed. I frowned slightly. What do you mean collapsed? It went bankrupt, he said. Completely. That surprised me. During my years abroad, they always told me the shop was doing better. Why didn't anyone tell me? I asked. My mother wiped a tear from her eye. Because you were already working so hard. We didn't want to worry you. My brother continued the story. When the shop failed, we had a lot of debt. Much more than we expected. I sent money every month. He nodded. Yes, and that money helped. But it wasn't enough. Something about his tone felt strange. So what does that have to do with leaving me at the airport? Neither of them answered immediately. Then my mother whispered something so quietly I almost didn't hear it. We had to choose? My chest tightened. Choose what? She looked up at me with red eyes. The house? I didn't understand. What about the house? My brother sighed and leaned forward. The debt collectors wanted their money. If we didn't pay, they were going to take the house. I felt the room getting colder. So I made a deal, my brother said. What kind of deal? He hesitated for a second. A businessman agreed to cover most of our debt. And my brother's eyes dropped to the table. In exchange, the house had to be put under my name only. The words sank slowly into my mind. And I guess I was the problem. My mother began crying softly. If the house stayed in your father's name, all the children would legally have a share. But the businessman didn't want that. He wanted everything under one person. I looked at my brother. So you chose yourself? Yeah. Wasn't like that, he said quickly. Oh, really? I said quietly. My voice was calm, but inside I could feel something burning. If I stayed part of the family, the house couldn't legally become only yours. My brother didn't answer. The silence said everything. So the solution was simple. I continued. Remove me. My mother shook her head desperately. We didn't want to do it like that, but you did. I remembered that moment at the airport again. The trunk opening. My suitcases on the sidewalk. Their car driving away. All of it suddenly made sense. My brother leaned forward urgently. Listen, we didn't expect things to turn out like this. I raised an eyebrow. Like what? He gestured around the room. This? My successful company. The large office. Everything they were seeing. We thought... He stopped mid-sentence. You thought I would fail? I finished. He didn't deny it. My mother spoke again, her voice full of regret. We were wrong. Another silence filled the room. Then my brother said the real reason they had come. The businessman who helped us, he wants his money back. I looked at him carefully. I thought he paid your debt. He did, my brother said. But it wasn't a gift. It was a loan. And you can't pay it? He shook his head. His deadline is next month, and if you don't, they'll take the house. I almost laughed. The same house they had kicked me out of. My mother leaned forward desperately. We heard about your company, about your success. Her eyes were begging. Please help us. There it was. The real reason they were here. Not because they suddenly loved me. Not because they regretted abandoning me. Because they needed something. My brother looked uncomfortable, but said it anyway. We just need a loan. I folded my hands on the table and looked at both of them. 3 years ago, I had stood alone at an airport with nowhere to go. Now the people who left me there were sitting across from me asking for help. The power in the room had completely shifted. My mother whispered, "You're the only one who can save the house." I stood up slowly and walked toward the large window of the conference room. From there, I could see the entire office floor. Dozens of employees, phones ringing, screens glowing. Everything I had built after losing my family. For a long moment, I didn't say anything. Then I turned back toward them. My brother looked nervous. My mother looked hopeful. And that's when I told them something they were definitely not expecting to hear. Actually, I said calmly, I already know the businessman who gave you that loan. Their eyes widened instantly, because the truth was, the man they owed money to now was someone who had become a very close business partner of mine. And what he told me about their situation a few weeks ago was far worse than the story they had just given me. My brother's face went pale the moment I said that. You know him? He asked slowly. I nodded. Wes. My mother looked confused. How? I walked back to the table and sat down again. The logistics industry is smaller than you think, I said calmly. 3 years ago, when I started my company, I partnered with several investors and shipping companies. One of them happens to be the same businessman who helped you. My brother's hands tightened on the table. You're talking about Mr. Kareem. Wes. The room became completely silent. My mother looked from me to my brother. You two know each other? I leaned back slightly. Better than you think. A few weeks earlier, Mr. Kareem and I had been having dinner after a business meeting. During our conversation, he casually mentioned a family that owed him a large amount of money and was struggling to repay it. At the time, I hadn't realized he was talking about my own family. But when he mentioned the house location and my brother's name, everything suddenly clicked. I didn't tell him who I was. I simply listened. And what he told me that night revealed something my family hadn't told me. I looked at my brother carefully. You told me the businessman covered most of the debt from Dad's shop. He nodded quickly. Yes, that part is true, I said. My mother looked relieved. But that's not the whole story. My brother shifted uncomfortably. What do you mean? I leaned forward slightly. The deal you made wasn't just about the house being under your name. His eyes flickered with panic. My mother looked confused again. What are you talking about? I kept my eyes on my brother. You also promised him something else. My brother immediately shook his head. That's not? You promised him ownership in your new business. My mother turned sharply toward him. What business? He didn't answer. I continued. The one you started after I left for work abroad. My mother looked completely shocked now. You started a business? She asked him. My brother avoided her gaze. I sighed quietly. Oh, Mr. Kareem told me everything. He gave you money to save the house and start your business, but in return he owns most of it. My brother finally snapped. I had no choice. You always have a choice, I replied calmly. My mother looked between us desperately. So what does this mean? I answered gently. It means the house isn't really theirs anymore. Her face turned pale. What? The loan wasn't the only problem? I explained. The business failed too. So now they owe even more money. My brother slammed his hand on the table. I tried to fix it. You tried to hide it, I corrected. My mother looked like the ground had disappeared under her feet. All these years, she whispered. My brother didn't say anything. I sat quietly for a moment, letting the truth settle in the room. Finally, my mother looked at me again. So what happens now? Her voice was barely a whisper. I stood up and walked slowly to the window again. 3 years ago, I had stood at an airport feeling completely abandoned. Now the same people who abandoned me were asking me to save them. Life had a strange sense of balance. Behind me, my mother spoke again. Please, she said softly. We made mistakes, terrible mistakes, but we are still your family. I closed my eyes for a moment. Those words would have meant everything to me years ago. But time changes people. Slowly, I turned around. My brother looked nervous. My mother looked broken. I spoke with Mr. Kareem last week, I said. Their attention locked onto me instantly. And my brother asked, and I bought the debt. Both of them froze. You what? My brother said. I bought it. I repeated calmly. The house loan, the business debt, everything. My mother stared at me like she couldn't believe what she was hearing. You own it now? She asked quietly. Yes. My brother's face went completely white. What does that mean for us? I walked back to the table and looked directly at him. It means the house belongs to me now. The silence that followed felt heavy. My brother opened his mouth but couldn't speak. My mother slowly began crying again. I never wanted things to become like this, she whispered. I believed her. But believing someone doesn't erase the past. I looked at my brother. You wanted the house under your name so badly that you erased me from the family. He looked down. And now the house is under my name. My mother wiped her tears nervously. Or are you going to take it away from us? That question hung in the air. 3 years ago, revenge would have been simple. I could have taken the house, left them with nothing, made them feel the same pain I felt at the airport. But standing there now, something inside me felt different. I was no longer the desperate person they had abandoned. I had already proven everything I needed to prove. Success had already become my revenge. I took a deep breath. No, I said. Both of them looked up instantly. I'm not taking the house. My mother's shoulders collapsed with relief. But things are going to change, I continued. My brother looked confused. What do you mean? It means the house stays with Mom, I said. His eyes widened. And you, he asked. I met his gaze calmly. You're moving out? What? You wanted to remove me from the family to protect the house? I said quietly. No, you know what that feels like. He looked stunned. But You'll figure it out, I said. For a moment, he looked like he wanted to argue, but then he lowered his head. My mother grabbed my hand suddenly. Thank you, she cried. I gently squeezed her hand. Don't thank me, I said. Just remember something. She nodded quickly. I looked at both of them. The day you left me at that airport, you thought my life was over. They stayed silent. But that moment didn't destroy me, I said. It built me. I walked toward the door of the conference room. Before leaving, I turned back one last time. The best revenge isn't destroying the people who hurt you. They watched me quietly. It's becoming so successful that their betrayal no longer has the power to hurt you. Then I opened the door and walked back into my busy office. And for the first time in years, I finally felt free.